Shall we start? In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, I ask God for help and guidance. One of the most fundamental values in Islamic ethics is loyalty, which in Arabic we say wafa. Wafa or loyalty is very important. And it is considered to be a sign of faith. One person asked our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, to explain for him all religious instructions, all of them. Said, أخبرني بجميع الشرائع الدين. Whatever religion asks us to do, let me know. And Imam mentioned one is to tell the truth, one is to judge justly, and one is to be loyal to your promise. He summarized everything in these three. So if you have these three, other things follow. If you don't have these three, other things don't work. And also we find that loyalty is something that defines our relation with God, also with people. Even can be extended to objects which have no life. For example, if I had a computer who has served me for some years, then there must be a loyalty between me and this computer. If there is a car or house that has helped me for some years, I should feel a relation of loyalty. So I should not throw it away, or I should not forget how much I have benefited from this. Loyalty is even extended to the objects. And it is said that the Prophet had named every object in his house. So even the rug he was using, the container, everything had a name. And I think this is a sign of recognition and loyalty. Unfortunately, nowadays, there's consumerism, and we keep changing things, and we throw them away. But this is not an etiquette of a believer. So it has many different dimensions: relation with God, with people, with everything. And it is said that also it has no exception. If you promise to do something, or if you sign a contract with someone, or you accept to keep the trust of someone, whether that person is a good person or bad person doesn't make difference. You can decide before commitment whether I should sign this contract with this bad person or not. But when you commit, you cannot then withdraw. So you have to keep your promise even to bad people. You have to give back the trust of even bad people if you have accepted to keep their trust. So even, for example, our hadith says, our Imam says that even if the killer of my father entrusts me with the sword that he has killed my father with, then I will give him back. And the Prophet, before Islam, was known with qualities, especially two qualities. He was known as As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. So he was truthful, and trustworthy. When the Prophet wanted to migrate from Mecca to Medina after 13 years of preaching and inviting people to Islam, and the situation in Mecca was very difficult, and they were torturing Muslims, killing, etc. So when he was migrating from Mecca to Medina, he had trust of the people of Mecca. The pagans who didn't believe in Islam, who found him an enemy for their ideas, but still they didn't question his trust and trustworthiness. So it all is a matter of commitment to the truth and a commitment to the word that you give to people. So we find that even when it comes, for example, to children, if you promise a child, if you make a contract with a child, you say to your, for example, child, you do this, I will take you, for example, out. This is a commitment that you are making. You cannot say the child, will forget or whatsoever. So we read in our hadith, أحب الصبيان وارحموهم وإذا وعدتموهم ففوا لهم. Love children and have mercy for them, and if you promise them, keep your promise. Why? Because when we make a contract or pact, or we give a promise, we sign a contract, first it's between me and that person. But as soon as this materializes, then would be with God. So God is not only the witness, but He is the one who demands both parties to observe this promise or this contract or this covenant. So I shouldn't say this child cannot do anything, if I don't keep my promise. Now it's not child, it's God who is demanding. Or when two people marry, for example, it's not just between this man and woman. Now it's God who is asking both parties to be loyal to this. So this is a very important aspect of Islamic ethics and spirituality. One thing that we find in the Quran is that God says, Awfu bil-uqud. In Arabic, sometimes we use aqd, which can be a contract. Sometimes we use ahd, which is a covenant, a promise. Sometimes we use mithaq, again, a covenant. So God says, Awfu bil-uqud. Be loyal to your contracts and commitments. Or innal ahda kana mas'ula. God is going to question you about your covenants and promises. Then we find that God Himself has made certain covenants with human beings in general, or some human beings. We heard about covenant in the Bible. For example, God has a general covenant with all human beings. And this is explained in different ways. One is through our innate nature. So God says, Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam, Allah ta'budu shaytan, innahu lakum aduwwun mubin, wa an i'buduni hadha siratun mustaqim. So God reminds us of a covenant between us and Him, that we should not follow Satan. He's a manifest enemy, and we should serve God, and this is the right path. So this is the covenant that God has with all people. But also God had covenant, for example, with the Israelites, with Bani Israel. With some nations He had also covenant. Or God has covenant with the prophets. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ. So there are different kinds of covenant that God has with all people, or some individuals. Another thing that the Quran mentions about covenant is the allegiance or bay'ah that you give to a godly appointed leader. For example, Muslims during the life of the Prophet, on different occasions, they paid allegiance to the Prophet. For example, in the year 10 after Hijrah, 12 after Hijrah, there were two occasions for allegiance that people paid allegiance to the Prophet, that they are going to believe and they are going to support and help. Or even in Medina later, when there were some issues, some challenges, they gave allegiance to the Prophet. Or for example, when a new successor to the Prophet is recognized or appointed depending on different Islamic views, again, people, as a sign of recognition and obedience, they make allegiance, which is normally in the form of shaking hands. So with your right hand, you shake hand with the right hand of the person that you are making allegiance. When women wanted to pay allegiance to the Prophet, so according to some historical reports, the Prophet used to put his hand in water, and they put their hand in water as a sign of allegiance. So, this is the general idea that we have about covenant of God, covenant with the godly appointed leaders, with people. But something that for us Shia is very important is also the allegiance that we make with the 12th Imam. Although we have not met him, so we are not physically able to shake hand and pay allegiance to Imam. But as a Shia, we feel that we have the same commitment as if we have officially and formally paid allegiance to him. And every day we should renew it. So in some of the du'as that we recite, we are recommended to recite every day, we say to God, Allahumma inni ujaddidu lahu fi hadha al-yawm wa fi kulli yawm ahdan wa aqdan wa bay'atan lahu fi unuqi. Today and every day I renew my allegiance with the 12th Imam, who is an occultation. And we use three terms, ahdan wa aqdan wa bay'atan. So it's a promise, it's a contract, and it's allegiance that I am renewing. So it's very much part of our mindset that although we don't see Imam, but we have to be loyal to him, and we have to be answerable to him, and we have to work for his cause. This is very important. Then we have something that is among the believers. God has made believers brothers and sisters. Quran says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. And one of the things that the Prophet used to do was to make a kind of pact of brotherhood between believers. He did it in Mecca, but the very famous one is in Medina. Because in Medina there were people who were people of Medina called Ansar, and there were migrants from Mecca, Muhajirun. And the Prophet made one Muhajir and one Ansari contract as a brother. And he made with Imam Ali, although both were Muhajir. So he chose Imam Ali as his brother. So this is something that has become a practice, and we, on the 18th of Dhul Hajj, Eid al-Ghadir, we may do this with each other. So in my life, with some people, I have made this, pact of brotherhood. It's interesting to read for you what we recite, the formula. So we say that واخيتك في الله وصافيتك في الله وصافحتك في الله. I have entered into brotherhood with you in God. Piero had very nice informative lecture in the morning. This meeting the other person in God, but then letting God in me meet the person. So here we say, وَخَيْتُكَ فِي اللَّهِ. This mu'akhat is fillah, in God. We have become brothers. Maybe one is, Asian, one is, Western or European, it doesn't matter. Any person. As long as they unite in God, they can make this brotherhood. وَصَافَيْتُكَ فِي اللَّهِ. This is a very nice term. Means between me and you, there is nothing impure. It's very pure and very clear and very transparent. Safa in Arabic means purity. Yeah? So Safaytuka fillah means there is no bad intention, there is no, hatred, no dislike, no lack of trust. There is only purity between us. There was a group, of course, a special group that they were Ismailis mostly, but they were calling themselves Ikhwan al-Safa, means brothers of purity. But the term is here general. Safaytuka fillah wasafahtuka fillah. And I shook hand with you for the sake of God. وَآهَدْتُ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ وَكُتُبَهُ وَرُسُلَهُ وَأَنْبِيَاءَهُ وَالْأَئِمَّةَ الْمَعْصُومِينَ. This is when I said God gets involved. So he says, I promise God and the angels and his scriptures and his messengers and prophets and infallible imams that if God grants me permission to enter heaven, I will not enter unless you are with me. It's a commitment. The other person then says, قبلت. I accept this. Because this is mutual. You cannot become brother of someone if he doesn't want to become brother. And then he says, I drop all the rights that I have upon you. Because we have long list of rights that faithful people have over each other. Long list. He says, I drop all my rights except 3. One is dua. You should remember me in your prayers. This right I don't drop. The other is ziyarah. We should visit each other. The third is shafa, intercession. So other than this, you are free from all the rights I have upon you. So this mutual. So this is the pact of brotherhood. That although we are brothers already, but 2 people can consciously commit each other to this kind of brotherhood, which is, very kind of formal and blessed by God. It's more than just every believer is brother or every, sister is sister of another faithful person. And it seems to me that whenever two people or two parties, for the sake of God, enter into a contract or pact, and they are honest and loyal, God is supporting them. I can do something, you can do something. But if we enter into pact, there is more blessing in this. Yeah? For example, maybe two priests or two imams in a city or village, they are preaching and trying to help people. And as brothers, they love each other. But if they enter into a pact and say, let us for the sake of God become brothers, or work together or have unity among ourselves, this pact brings more blessings of God to them. This formal commitment brings some real changes. It's not formality only. For example, when in chapter Pact, verse 10, God talks about the people who paid allegiance to the prophet. He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ. Those who pay allegiance to you, indeed they are paying allegiance to God. Because as I said, as soon as you make commitment, God is involved. And then he says, Yadullah fawqa aydihim. God's hand is above their hands. So on the earth, two people give hand to each other, shake hands. This is on the earth. But in reality, God's hand is also there. Above them, but also, according to what we find in some hadith, inside their hands. I will mention about shaking hand. So, whoever breaks this pact is indeed harming himself. And those who keep this pact, God is going to give them great reward. You may say, oh, this is only for allegiance to the prophet. But no. This is, maybe for the prophet has more reward, but this is the reward for commitment to any pact that you make. Even we have, many hadiths about the benefit of shaking hands. When I shake hand with another believer, in my humble opinion, is renewal of the pact of brotherhood that God has made between us. When I shake hand, it means that I acknowledge that you are my brother, and I only wish you good, and it's upon me to do whatever I can so that you have peaceful life. So, hadith says, as long as they hold hand of each other, their sins are dropped. And we find about the Prophet that when he was shaking hand with people, he was not the first to withdraw his hand. He was letting the other person leave the hand of Rasulullah free. He was never withdrawing his hand. And in another hadith it says that when two people shake hand, which is a sign of renewing their pact, God puts his hand between their hands. But God with his face will be turning towards the one who has greater love for the other. So he is between the two, but face of God, Wajhullah, is towards the person who has greater love for the other. So, when I am trying to organize my life, especially my relations with other people, and I find people who have faith in God, who have sincerity, making this pact is an opportunity to bring God among us more and have his support and blessing more, and in this way create a space which is sacred between us. This is the beauty of Pact. But now, coming to what we have in between me and Piero. So I try to have some reflections on this. Not as beautiful as your reflections, but just something simple that I can share. So Piero mentioned the pact that was between Chiara and Foucault, which maybe was new in Christianity, yes? I don't think there was such a pact before, maybe. It was maybe new. And then he offered that we would have this pact between us, which I think, in a sense, this is also new. Because many people maybe sign contracts, Muslims, Christians, even maybe collaboration. But this was purely for God and without any, personal gain here, and something that came out of our humility and acknowledgement that we alone cannot understand the plan of God. Let us work together and invite God to help us. So I was thinking, what has happened here is maybe in line with what happened between Chiara and Foucault, but in a sense different. Because now we don't shake hands with each other and make pact of love as two Catholics or as two Muslims. It's a practicing faithful Catholic and a faithful practicing Shia Muslim that are making this pact of love. And they are happy to give their life for each other. So it's the power of love for God that has transcended the boundaries of faith and our communities, that has made one Muslim and one Christian, one from Middle East, one from Italy, able to meet in God and find God's presence so powerful that their differences didn't matter anymore. And they found that they can unite in God and work for unity of mankind. But then I thought this was not only between me and Piero, because my relation is not only with Piero. My relation is with Focolare, yes? And Piero, for me, represented a spirituality of Focolare. When I am united with Piero, means I am united with Focolare. So Piero is a meeting point with Focolare. And maybe for him, also he is not meeting Muhammad Ali Shomali. He's meeting in me another tradition that I am representing. So hopefully what we did was that by us maybe because of some reasons, being more attentive to this bond, we facilitated two communities and two traditions come together, not just two individuals. Foucault was one person. Chiara was one person. Yes, they made this pact and was very powerful. But I think between me and Piero, it's not one person and another person. It's not that I hide myself or I have no one with me and I just personally, or it's not like, for example, I don't know, a contract I sign with someone. In Piero, I see the beauty of spirituality, of focolare and charisma of unity, and I know that he's committed, he's understanding, he's talented. So it's very natural for me that if I want to enter into such a relation with focolare, he's the very good candidate. And maybe for him, I don't know why you made mistake in this making pact with me, but maybe in me he found something the same. So it's no longer two individuals. And I hope if God blesses, we are the starting point, but it becomes pact of love and unity between Shia Muslims and focolare and then Catholics. So I think this has this potential. Not because, for example, all the people, for example, who are Shia are supporting me or knowing me or trusting me. It doesn't mean that. Or for example, Piero, maybe not every Catholic in the world know Piero. But still, when two traditions have reached that level of maturity that can offer two loyal and faithful members for working for unity, whether they know or not, they are meeting. It doesn't matter, they realize or they, sign and say, okay, Piero, you on behalf of focolare go and, become united with the Shia. It's organic, it's natural. And when this happens, no one can reverse it. And no one can ignore it. It makes history. What it requires is just we have to be loyal to it. And we have to make sure that God's support continues. We did it for the sake of God. We tried to be loyal to our own traditions. We didn't try to compromise or betray our traditions. So we, as fruits of two trees, are united. There is no way that the trees will not be united unless we change. We betray our traditions or we betray, our cause. So I think, God willing, good Muslims, and I mean by good, those who are practicing, but are open-minded, who are humble, who are not arrogant, who are thinkers, free thinkers, and also good Christians who are practicing humble, free thinkers, would benefit from this relation. And we can make this known to every person, that our traditions are not at risk when we are together. Because unfortunately, many people think that you are taking big risk if you spend time, with Christians, you work together, collaborate together, etc. or if you are doing this with Muslims, we are able to show that our traditions are not at risk, our communities are not at risk. Indeed, we are able to liberate them from unnecessary worries. Yeah, we have too many real worries in the world. Let fear of Muslims, in Christians, or fear of Christian in Muslim not be another worry. We indeed are to support each other. When you think your friend is an enemy, then you are imprisoned in this thinking. Yeah, you are always, suffering. This is your friend, it's not your enemy. This is your brother, it's not, enemy. So we are freeing many people have told me after listening to lectures about Wings of Unity, etc., that this is liberating. We are now more free. So we hopefully can free our communities from this, unnecessary worry, indeed this unrealistic worry and concern, and make them appreciate brotherhood that God has planted between us. But this brotherhood has not been watered, has not been cultivated, has been abundant. And now we want this to grow. So, I think now our theology is somehow more prepared than before. Not still 100% prepared, but I think our theology has grown enough to let us do these things without feeling that we are compromising about our doctrines or theology. Maybe before Second Vatican Council, a true Catholic could not do this. Yeah? Maybe if I was, 200 years ago, I was not able to do this. I don't know. But at least I know that our theology allows this. But still, when we read the books on our theology or exegesis of the Quran, still I think we need to develop more consistent and more organized way of explaining the relation that God has made between people of Abrahamic tradition. Still, unfortunately, our mentality, whether we know or not, is that there are different religions. There are different communities. But they have common things. This is not what God has planned. We are not different communities. We are not different religions. We are all members of one religion and one community and one path. Our theology sometimes is helping to understand this and sometimes is not helping to understand this. This is not the guilt of, a scripture. This is the guilt of maybe historical problems, or maybe it's just shortcoming. Maybe it's not a guilt. But anyway, we are at a point that now we can revisit all these things and try to organize them in the light of our experience, in the light of a strong unity that we sense between us. Especially the level of nearness and closeness that we can sense between us, which we cannot necessarily sense with a person of the same tradition if he or she is not God-centered. Yeah? So you can ask people about their catechism or doctrines and then say, okay, you must feel very close to this person because I checked all the doctrines are similar. Okay? This is not a good way. Just to have a theoretical test. The best thing is to see how God is important for this person and that person. how devoted they are, how humble they are, how loving they are. Okay? So based on that, I can see that a Sunni can be very close to a Shia. Maybe more closer than another Shia or than another Sunni. Or a Muslim can be very close to a Christian than another Muslim. There are Muslims that I don't want to spend even 1 hour with them. Yeah, it's a fact, whether you like it or not. Maybe there are Christians that you don't want to spend 1 hour with them. But when we are together, we don't want to leave. And whenever we want to say goodbye, it's very sad, you know. Why? Why we enjoy being together? Because God is present when we are together. Not only our discussions are blessed by God, even our prayers are blessed by God. So even when we are alone or we are together praying in such meetings, our prayers are always special. So one of the best prayers some of the best prayers I have ever had is when I am in this kind of meetings. So God is blessing everything. God is blessing our discussion, God is blessing our prayers, God is blessing our interactions. So I hope this is a beginning of change of our perspective of another community, another tradition, and little by little realizing that we are already united. We don't need to create anything. We just need to recognize. Unity is not what we can make. Unity is what God can make, and unity is what God has already planted. We need to acknowledge and let it grow. We don't need to do anything, and we don't have ability to do anything. It is only God who is the source of all the goodness. Just we need to help God by not being first obstacles, and second, by being catalyst. Don't be obstacle, rather be catalyst for others to explore unity that God has planted in us. Thanks to God, now after this is 13th round of Wings of Unity, we are much clearer than beginning about the journey, and we have made very, long distance, but it is like being on top of a hill and seeing that there is a mount. So still we have long journey ahead, but the good point is that rest of journey will be together. God willing, we will never separate from each other, and maybe God will help us to join other people, because this journey becomes more beautiful and less tiring when you have more people together. May God help us as He has always been helping. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.